Brown tips. Brown tips are almost never caused by disease. In the vast majority of cases, they are a direct sign that the plant is losing water faster than its roots can absorb it. The scientific term for this is transpirational stress, and it begins at the leaf edges because those cells are the furthest from the plant's vascular system. Once a tip turns brown, it does not recover. Cutting it off does nothing to fix the problem. The plant will simply produce new brown tips until the underlying cause is addressed. The most common triggers are low humidity, underwatering, and exposure to heating vents or fans blowing dry air directly onto the leaves. Yellow leaves. Lower half of the plant. When only the bottom leaves of a plant turn yellow while the upper leaves stay green, the plant is doing something deliberate. It is reallocating nitrogen from its oldest, least efficient leaves upward to support new growth. This is a completely normal process called senescence, and it happens in nearly every plant species. The confusion arises because gardeners see yellow and assume something is wrong. If the yellowing is gradual, affects only one or two lower leaves at a time, and the rest of the plant looks healthy, there is nothing to fix. However, if yellowing is spreading upward rapidly, that signals overwatering, root rot, or a genuine nutrient deficiency, most often nitrogen. Yellow leaves, all over the plant. When yellowing appears across the entire plant at once, the roots are almost certainly involved. Overwatering is the most frequent cause, but the mechanism is counterintuitive. The plant is not drowning in water, it is suffocating from a lack of oxygen. When soil stays wet for too long, the air pockets between soil particles collapse and fill with water. Root cells cannot absorb oxygen, they begin to die, and the plant loses its ability to transport nutrients. The leaves yellow because chlorophyll production shuts down. Curling inward, edges rolling toward the center. When leaves curl inward along their length, rolling their edges toward the upper surface, the plant is reducing its exposed surface area. This is a controlled physiological response to water loss, not damage, but defense. The curl reduces the total area through which moisture can evaporate. It is most commonly triggered by underwatering, very high temperatures, or extremely low humidity. Some plants, particularly tropical species, can look severely wilted and curled within a single afternoon of dry conditions and fully recover within hours of watering. The key test is whether the curl reverses after watering. If it does not, root damage may already be preventing water uptake. Curling downward, edges rolling toward the lower surface. Downward curling, when leaf edges roll under toward the bottom of the leaf, is a different symptom from inward curling and usually has a different cause. It is most frequently associated with overfertilisation, specifically excess nitrogen. When a plant receives more nitrogen than it can process, it pushes out rapid, soft new growth that the leaf structure cannot fully support. The edges curl downward under their own weight. Heat stress can produce the same response in some species. The distinction matters because the fix is opposite. If curl is caused by underwatering, you add water. If it is caused by overfertilisation, you stop adding anything and flush the soil. Dark brown or black spots with yellow halos. Brown or black spots surrounded by a ring of yellow tissue are the signature of a fungal infection. The yellow halo is the boundary between dying infected tissue and the living cells the plant is attempting to defend. The fungus spreads through water, specifically through water sitting on leaf surfaces. Splashing during watering, high humidity with poor air circulation, or leaves touching each other in wet conditions all create ideal conditions for spore germination. The most important change is not a fungicide. It is watering at the base of the plant rather than overhead, improving airflow and removing affected leaves immediately to slow spread. Infected leaves do not heal. The spots expand until the leaf dies. Small yellow or white spots, stippling pattern. A speckled pattern of tiny pale dots across the upper surface of a leaf is almost always caused by spider mites. Each dot marks a single cell that has been punctured and drained of its contents. Spider mites are not insects, they are arachnids, closely related to spiders and ticks, which is why standard insecticides are usually ineffective against them. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs in her lifetime, and eggs hatch within 3 days in warm conditions. The undersides of affected leaves are where mites live, feed, and reproduce. Fine webbing appears once populations become large. The fastest diagnostic test is running a piece of white paper beneath a leaf and tapping it sharply. Mites will fall onto the paper and move. Soft, translucent, mushy spots. Translucent patches that feel soft or waterlogged to the touch are caused by cell death from cold damage. Unlike most plant problems that develop gradually, cold injury can happen within minutes when a tropical houseplant touches a cold window pane in winter, when an outdoor plant is caught by a sudden frost, or when chilled water is poured directly onto leaves. The cells rupture because the water inside them expands as it freezes or chills rapidly. The translucency comes from the collapse of the cell walls. There is no treatment. Affected tissue dies and eventually turns brown or black. The same symptom can also appear from bacterial rot, but bacterial infections typically smell unpleasant and spread more rapidly. White powdery coating on leaf surfaces. A white or grey powder that can be rubbed off a leaf surface is powdery mildew, a fungus that, unlike most fungi, does not need wet leaves to grow. It thrives in dry conditions with high ambient humidity, which is why it appears most often in late summer or in rooms where temperature fluctuates. It spreads through airborne spores and can colonize a plant within days. The white coating is actually the fungal body growing on the surface of the leaf, drawing nutrients from the cells beneath. Severely infected leaves yellow and drop. Diluted baking soda solution, neem oil, or potassium bicarbonate sprays disrupt the surface pH that the fungus requires. Removing badly affected leaves slows the spread. Silvery or bronze sheen on leaves. A metallic sheen, silver, bronze, or pale grey, developing across the upper surface of leaves is the diagnostic sign of thrips. These tiny insects, most less than 2 millimeters long, rasp through the leaf surface to feed on the cells beneath. The silvery appearance comes from the empty, air-filled cells left behind after the contents are consumed. Thrips are fast-moving and difficult to see without magnification, but they can be detected by shaking a branch over a white surface. They are unique among common plant pests in that they can fly and are capable of infesting an entire collection within weeks. They also transmit plant viruses as they feed, which makes early detection particularly important. Pale, washed-out leaves. No pattern. When leaves lose their deep green color and become uniformly pale, bleached or faded without any specific spots or patterns, the cause is almost always too much direct light. This is called photobleaching, and it occurs when intense light destroys chlorophyll molecules faster than the plant can produce them. It happens most often when a plant accustomed to indirect light is suddenly moved to a south-facing window or placed outdoors in full sun. The damage is often irreversible in the affected leaves. Moving the plant to a location with filtered or indirect light stops further damage. Some species, particularly those native to tropical understory environments, can never adapt to full sun regardless of how gradually they are introduced to it. Dark green, almost black leaves. Leaves that are darker than normal, deep, almost black-green, are not a sign of exceptional health. They are a sign that the plant is compensating for insufficient light by producing excess chlorophyll to capture whatever light is available. The same mechanism that gives deep-sea algae their intense pigmentation is at work in an underlit houseplant. While the plant is functional in this state, it is typically growing slowly, producing smaller leaves and building up softer, weaker tissue that is more susceptible to fungal infection and pest damage. Moving the plant to a brighter position will gradually return leaf color to normal, and new growth will appear noticeably lighter and larger. Wilting. Despite wet soil, a plant that wilts even though the soil is consistently wet is experiencing root failure. The most common cause is root rot, a condition where roots have been kept in waterlogged soil long enough for anaerobic bacteria and water molds, particularly Phytophthora and Pythium species, to colonize and destroy the root tissue. Without functional roots, the plant cannot move water upward regardless of how much is available. Adding more water accelerates the destruction. The only viable intervention is unpotting the plant, cutting away all dark, mushy or foul-smelling roots, treating the remaining healthy roots with a diluted hydrogen peroxide solution, and repotting in fresh, dry, well-draining substrate. Holes in leaves, no other symptoms. Clean, irregular holes in leaves without any surrounding discoloration, spotting or webbing are almost always caused by physical feeding from caterpillars, slugs, or snails. These are chewing insects and mollusks that consume leaf tissue directly. The key distinguishing feature is the cleanliness of the edges. Unlike disease damage or sucking insects, chewing damage produces well-defined holes with intact, undamaged edges. Slugs and snails are nocturnal and leave a trail of dried mucus as evidence. Caterpillars are often found resting on the undersides of leaves during daylight. Small holes that appear almost perfectly round are sometimes caused by flea beetles, which are particularly destructive on seedlings. Sticky residue on leaves. A sticky coating on leaf surfaces, often described as feeling like honey or syrup, is not produced by the plant. It is honeydew, a sugar-rich waste product excreted by sap-sucking insects, including aphids, scale insects, mealybugs, and whiteflies. These insects feed by inserting their mouthparts through the leaf surface into the phloem, the plant's internal transport system, and extracting plant sugars continuously. The honeydew they excrete coats leaves below and attracts a secondary problem, sooty mold, a black fungus that grows on the sugar residue and blocks light from reaching the leaf surface. Treating the insects removes the source. The sooty mold clears naturally once no new honeydew is deposited. Leaf drop without discoloration. When leaves drop suddenly while still green and apparently healthy, the plant has made a deliberate sacrifice. This typically occurs as a response to sudden environmental change, being moved to a new location, a dramatic shift in temperature, or being repotted. Plants lose water through their leaves continuously, and when the root system is disturbed or the plant is placed in unfamiliar conditions, shedding leaves immediately reduces the water demand on a compromised root system. It is a survival mechanism. The same response occurs in deciduous trees every autumn, triggered by shortening daylight rather than cold. Indoor plants that drop leaves after being moved to lower light are doing the same thing, adjusting their leaf surface area to match available light. Variegated leaves reverting to solid green. Variegated plants, those with white, cream, or yellow patches on their leaves, can gradually revert to producing fully green leaves. The variegation exists because some cells in those leaves contain little or no chlorophyll. Entirely green cells are more efficient at photosynthesis, and if a plant is under stress or placed in low light, it prioritizes producing green growth simply because it is more productive. The reverted fully green shoots grow faster and stronger than variegated ones, and over time they outcompete and replace them. Removing all green shoots as soon as they appear is the only way to maintain variegation. In high light conditions with good growing conditions, many plants will maintain their variegation naturally without intervention.